In a small German town, there's a cemetery, and at two opposite ends of it lie two brothers. One of them built Adidas, the other built Puma. They began with a single shared dream and ended as the bitterest of enemies. Two of the most famous brands on earth, born from the very same tiny workshop. Their feud would split an entire town in half. Neighbors stopped speaking to each other. People started checking your shoes before they would even shake your hand. But it didn't begin with hatred. It began with two brothers who had nothing but each other. And it all fell apart because of one sentence whispered in the dark. Let's rewind to a Germany that was broke, beaten, and desperate after the First World War. In a humble little town called Herzogenaurach, a shoemaker's family was just trying to survive. The younger brother, Adi, was the quiet one, shy, obsessive, happiest alone with a needle and thread. The older brother, Rudi, was his opposite, loud, charming, a born salesman who could sell sand in a desert. Adi wanted only one thing, to build the perfect shoe. Rudi could sell that shoe to anyone who walked past. So in their mother's laundry room, the two brothers went into business together. In 1924, they founded the Dassler Brothers Shoe Factory. Adi built the shoes, and Rudi sold them. The perfect team. For a while, it was magic, and the shoes flew off the shelves. But the very difference that made them unstoppable was already starting to divide them. By the 1930s, the Dassler brothers were making the finest track spikes in the world. All they needed now was a stage. And in 1936, they got the biggest stage on the planet, the Berlin Olympics. Adi drove straight to the Olympic Village, spikes in hand, and he walked up to Jesse Owens, a Black American sprinter Hitler desperately did not want to win. Adi convinced him to lace up a pair of Dassler shoes. Owens tied them tight. Then he exploded down the track. He crossed the line first, in front of the whole world. 4 gold medals at Hitler's own Olympics, and every one of them was won in German shoes. It was the birth of the sponsorship deal as we know it. Overnight, orders flooded in, and the brothers became famous. They were on top of the world. But this is exactly where their story started to rot. Because the Second World War was coming. The factory that made running shoes was ordered to make weapons for the army. And both brothers, like most business owners under the regime, became members of the Nazi Party. Under the pressure of war, their personalities stopped being a strength and became a weapon. Adi was convinced his brother was a reckless loudmouth. Rudi was convinced Adi was a schemer, quietly cutting him out. And then 2 things happened that lit the fuse. First, Rudi was drafted and sent off to serve, while Adi stayed home to run the factory. And Rudi became certain his little brother had pulled strings to get rid of him. Then came the night the bombers arrived. Adi and his wife rushed into a bomb shelter, where Rudi and his family were already crammed inside. As Adi climbed in, he muttered something under his breath. "The dirty bastards are back again," he said, meaning the planes overhead. But in that dark, terrified little room, Rudi heard it completely differently. Rudi was convinced his own brother had just called him and his family the dirty bastards. One sentence and one misunderstanding. And it created a wound that would never, ever heal. To this day, historians still argue over what really happened in that shelter. When the war ended, the real knives came out. Rudi was captured by American soldiers, interrogated, and suspected of ties to the SS. He was thrown into a prisoner of war camp. And there, Rudi became certain of one thing, that his own brother had denounced him to the Americans. Meanwhile, Adi stayed home, was cleared, and kept the factory running. From behind bars, it looked like his brother had stolen everything. When Rudi was finally released, he walked home a changed man. There was no reunion, only 2 cold brothers who turned their backs on each other. They were finished, not just as businessmen, but as brothers. In 1948, they divided everything they owned. The workers were told to choose a side. Even the patents were torn cleanly in 2, and a river ran right through the middle of the town, so the brothers moved to opposite banks of it. Rudi crossed the water with his half of the company. and named his new brand after a fast, fierce animal, Puma. Adi mashed his own name together into a single word, Adidas, and he added 3 simple stripes so you could spot his shoes from across a stadium. Now there were 2 companies in one tiny town making almost the same shoe, directly across a river from each other, fueled by pure hatred. And their private war quickly became everyone's problem because the whole town was forced to pick a side. Adidas workers refused to drink in the Puma pub. There were 2 bakeries on a single divided street, 2 rival football clubs splitting the town in 2. Young couples from opposite sides were forbidden from dating. It was as if an invisible wall had been built through the town. And people developed a strange new habit. Before they'd speak to a stranger, they would glance down at their shoes. They called Herzogenaurach the town of bent necks, an entire community walking around staring at each other's feet. But here's the twist most people miss. The hatred made both companies great, because each brother would do absolutely anything to beat the other. In 1954, the World Cup final was played in the pouring rain. West Germany, the underdogs, faced a Hungarian team that simply could not be beaten. The pitch turned to thick, sucking mud. But the Germans had a secret weapon Adi invented, screw-in studs, swapped for the conditions. And they pulled off the miracle, scoring the winning goal. The Germans celebrated in the rain, wearing 3 stripes. And in that moment, Adidas was cemented into history. By 1970, the 2 brands were spending fortunes fighting over athletes. So they made a secret pact not to pay the biggest star on earth, Pelé. Neither brand would offer him a single cent. And then Puma quietly broke the deal. Right before kickoff, Pelé knelt down in the center of the pitch to tie his boots, and the camera zoomed in on that Puma logo, broadcast to hundreds of millions. It was pure marketing genius, and Adidas was furious. Every blow one brother landed, the other answered even harder. The feud itself had become the engine driving them both forward, and it powered them into global empires worth billions. But through all of it, the 2 brothers never spoke again. Not once, not a single phone call. Rudolf died first in 1974, still refusing to forgive. And Adi followed him 4 years later. Both of them were buried in that same town cemetery, deliberately placed at opposite ends, as far apart in death as they had spent their whole lives trying to be. For over 60 years, the feud lived on, until finally, in 2009, employees from Adidas and Puma did something the founders never could. They played a friendly football match together and shook hands, burying the war at last. So what do you take from 2 brothers who let one bad night cost them a lifetime? Their rivalry built 2 of the greatest brands the world has ever seen, but it cost them the one thing they could never manufacture again: each other. So the next time you see 3 stripes or a leaping cat, remember the 2 brothers who lived a river apart and died a graveyard apart, and never once said sorry.